What's up, everybody? So, Primaris Space Marines are the way in which GW is going to evolve the range of the Imperiums of Astartes. It's been very clear, even from the beginning, despite the fact that they were saying they're not going to replace the Firstborn. I felt that was more so like in that edition. And while they haven't actually replaced units yet, we're getting closer. And I do feel like if you're shocked by this revelation, then you haven't been paying attention. And I'm fine with it personally. I know some people aren't, and I get that. But I'm a big Space Marine fan. I do thoroughly enjoy the Primaris, both the aesthetic. I like the scale of their models. I wish they're a bit more modular to build, not quite clamshelly, but still very cool. And I look forward to seeing what they do with these Astartes in the future for the Imperium. But with that said, from day one, basically, there has been this question that people have asked, I have pondered, and there's been kind of like a meme type of answer, which is, what will happen to Terminators? And people saying, well, that's your aggressors, your Gravis Armor aggressors, or your Terminator equivalent, ha ha ha. Then, with Blade Guard veterans in the Victor Tactical Warsuit, all three have been combined to state they've taken Terminators and distilled them down to these three different roles to kind of represent some aspects of Terminator armor. And I get the basics of that concept, but outside of being a fan of Terminator armor, and I'm a big fan of Terminator armor, outside of that, I do believe that Terminator armor will still be around. I do believe it's something that will offer the Primaris a unique way of fighting that their Mark 10 modular armor cannot provide. And on the lore perspective, in terms of the capabilities of Terminator armor, which don't always get translated into the edition very well of the game, granted, 8th edition was kind of a little weak sauce on some of the editions in the past. Terminator armor felt a little odd or out of place. That's, I think, due to balancing not being done particularly well for them, given the way certain things have acted. Maybe they just didn't think to make it a bit more aggressive or whatever else. But it still provides capabilities that power armor just will not be able to match. So, because of that, and because Call is a technological MacGuffin for the Astartes War Gear in 40k, I do believe, honestly, that Primaris Terminator armor will become a thing. I think it'll take time. I don't know what their personal timetable is going to be for Primaris becoming the Astartes range fully. But I do think, as I do with some other units in the Space Marine range, that the Terminator squad will not go away. It'll just become a Primaris Terminator squad. Now, the easy way to do that would, of course, be taking the current Terminator range, making it scaled up, bigulating it, if you will, to be in line with the Primaris range, because Terminator armor has always been described as bigger than standard POW armor, so bulking it out so it is standing above Mark 10 armor a little bit and generally bigger would work. I'm just calling it a day there and keeping the same type of squad with a Primaris stat line eventually. You could do that, because Terminator armor is big enough where Primaris, for the most part, will be able to fit in it without much issue. And remember, height is something that in 40k we don't really think of that much, because the art tends to showcase, as well as the miniatures tend to showcase, an even height range for the Space Marines. And, of course, obviously miniatures height across the board, Tau as tall as Eldar, as tall as humans, roughly as tall as Astartes. But that's the limitations of miniatures. But art-wise, Space Marines stand above those, and Space Marines tend to be roughly the same size to each other in art. But in some of the lore and some of the novels, we get to hear about height variance, and it's a thing, clearly. There are some standard Astartes that would be standing as tall as Primaris right now, because they are very big Astartes, and I'm sure there are Astartes that are a bit shorter than the other Astartes as well. So, I say that because Primaris would have the same gambit of height, but the median height would be able to fit in Terminator armor the way Terminator armor has been described, I feel, with very little modification. So that'd be the easy way out. But instead of doing that, I want the rest of this long-winded ramble to be just a thought discussion on what Primaris Terminator armor might be like. So this ramble exists to kind of call out the fact that I think Primaris Terminator armor will become a thing despite having Gravis and everything else. So if it's true, I can cite this as like, hey, I got it right. Yay, that's kind of cool. If I got it wrong, I can cite it and say, totally wrong. Yay. But anyways, and on top of that, I just want to theorize on some things that I think could happen for Terminator armor for Primaris. And if anything happens similar, that would be kind of cool to see. Kind of just theorizing here. So with that said, if we look at the Primaris range and the Primaris concept, it is meant to be an evolution of Astartes. It's meant to bring them to make them even more dangerous, and their equipment is meant to be some type of build up and improvement over prior equipment. On the armor concept, Mark 10 power armor is modular armor. That's its big innovation, you could say. It is capable of being outfitted in Gravis, Tacticus, Omnis, and Phobos pattern variants. And this allows for different degrees and capability, and that's really cool. And yes, innovation is a thing in 40k for the Imperium. The biggest misconception that people hold on to is that the Imperium does not do any technological progression or innovation, which is simply not true. And I'm not just talking about STC fragment discoveries. Actual true blue research and development does happen. It's a small percentage of the Mechanicum, and it takes a longer time, but it does still happen. Call us just a technological MacGuffin that kind of showcases this in kind of a microcosm for the Astarte stuff. So, with that said, yeah, innovation is fine here in this concept, no problem. So that's Mark 10 power armor. That's one of its big, improvements is being modular, which is very nice. It, in a way, is able to explain away maybe not having any Primaris scouts because they're able to make it modular and do stuff with the scouts or whatever. Anyways, Terminator armor for Primaris can still be a thing because Gravis armor just, in my opinion, simply does not hold up to the rigors of what Terminator armor is made for. It's not ever really described as being as hardy. It makes you tougher to kill. It is just a walking slab of ceramite, sure, but it just doesn't give off the sense of protection in the same way Terminator armor does lore-wise, right? Because Terminator armor is not just able to take anti-tank firepower and shrug it off and block via its invulnerability save things that would vaporize a tank as well. But on top of that, it's also shielding from a variety of environmental threats and radiation problems. It's meant for use of the most hazardous environments. Basically they can teleport right next to a leaking, overacting reactor without issue. That type of stuff, as well as taking all the firepower and dishing out tremendous damage. Above and beyond what power armor is even able to shield its user from. So, as a result, Gravis cool, but not quite as powerful in terms of defense capability as Terminator armor all around the board, lore-wise. Invictor Tactical Warsuit is not in the same capacity as worn armor. So, again, offers things, but still different from what an infantry squad would be like. So, that leaves us with Terminator armor to still fill that role. And we have to remember, Terminator armor is referred to as Tactical Dreadnought armor. That is kind of its official designation, if you will. And it's important then to look at the Dreadnought. In this case, for Primaris, the Redemptor Dreadnought. Yes, Primaris is in essence their Dreadnought. The Redemptor Dreadnought is technically the way the lore is written and everything, a Primaris Dreadnought. But you could also technically state via the keyword designation and stuff like that, that's not there for Primaris, that it's a Dreadnought that any Astarte sarcophagus could function in, which is theoretically and technically kind of true. But we're going to look at the Redemptor Dreadnought, which was designed alongside the rest of the Primaris stuff as the Dreadnought to then become tactical armor from, right? For Terminator armor. So, aesthetically, I'm not saying it's going to resemble the Dreadnought. They don't typically do. But aesthetics are gonna follow Primaris aesthetics. I'm not an artist, so there's no drawings or renderings or anything like that. But I would imagine it would blend a variety of Terminator armor styles into its kind of more industrial slab-sided Primaris ways. Right, Primaris power armor still incorporates some of the older marks of power armor in the form of helmet, and in some cases the ruggedness of it, if you will, depending upon what you're looking at. But with the Terminator armor, Cataphracti, Tardos, and Dominus, which is the current pattern, would all factor in for some design cues, I'm sure. Even the Mark 1 craziness of ridiculous shoulder padness would factor in as well. That period of really boxy, blocky looking Terminator armor will just pretend never existed. Anyways, with that said, aesthetically, it'll probably be identifiable as Terminator armor for sure, but take cues from Mark 10, I think, and some of the marks of Terminator armor. Tartaros, despite not being my favorite, Cataphracti is, but I think Tartaros is a fantastic pattern of Terminator armor to take design cues in the form of Primaris, because I think it matches Primaris aesthetic fairly well. So, anyways, from there, let's focus on what this would bring to the wearer, right? I can't talk stat line, I don't know. It would definitely have quintessential Terminator armor saves. The saves that Terminator armor is known for would be there. The stat line would be Primaris veteran stat line, would probably bump up the toughness or wounds or both. Who knows? To suitably represent this Terminator armor being crazy, or at least an upgrade for them. The big thing, however, is the power plant. The Redemptor Dreadnought power plant is very powerful, and as silly as it is, it can burn out the sarcophagus using it because it's not very well shielded. It produces too much power. The way it does things, it can just burn up. Not literally burn up, but kind of like as if it was a circuit board, burn out the user, the pilot inside. And it's silly because you would think a Star Chase being as precious as they are, you wouldn't burn them out like that. But the way the lore is set up, which may get retconned and hopefully will, that's kind of how it is right now. But anyway, the suit of armor, however, I feel wouldn't be given such a dangerous power plant. I think the power plant would be upgraded, but because the Terminator armor is meant to be worn in the most hazardous of situations to protect you from this exact thing, having it do it to you over time makes no sense. So I feel like in that case, we would see a upgrade of the Terminator suit's power plant, internal power plant, to the maximum safe level. And this will allow, in my opinion, again, this is all theory, I'm just going over how I would design Primaris Terminator armor. I would give it an ability, an extra ability. So Terminator armor, we know the stat line more or less would be kind of beef. We know that the armor saves would still be there. It would be able to deep strike just like it can now via teleportation from the teleporter rays, but we can borrow some influence from the Grey Knight Interceptor Squad a little bit with a one-time per battle use of a teleport shunt. Now in Dawn of War, we see this happen as an ability for Terminator squads. So number 1, 2, and 3, Terminator squads can teleport on the battlefield in the strategy game, which is really cool. They can't do that in the actual 40k. And Grey Knight Interceptor squads are powered armored dudes that have personal teleporters. And it's described how dangerous this is to do because they don't have the added protection of Terminator armor to deep strike like that, which is why deep strike is possible via teleportation with Terminator armor, no problem. But thanks to the psychic abilities of the Grey Knights and the Brotherhoods of the squad and everything, they're able to do teleport shunts quickly across the battlefield, typically in straight lines, and work like jump infantry in that regard. They're able to do it safely despite not having the added protection. They're the only forces in the Imperium that could really utilize this technology like that with their personal teleporters. So to borrow from that but not steal his thunder and keep that as a very cool, unique thing, we can have these Primaris Terminators do something similar, but once per battle. And basically what I'm saying is, we could say thanks to the upgraded power plant of the Terminator armor is able to maintain a warp shunt capacitor for a one-time use per battle before having to be recharged outside of a combat situation, yada yada yada. And we can have once per battle during the movement phase in which the Terminator squad did not deep strike. You may remove them from play and redeploy them on the battlefield anywhere within X amount of inches. Let's say 36 inches, 48 inches, or something. Something like that, and they would be able to balance out accordingly the actual distance. And that would be that one-time use teleport shunt, and they will be able to do this thanks to the protections of the Terminator armor, and they only do it once because the armor, it's just too much to do continuously, and the power plant is only able to support it once, let's say. You may be saying, well, what about the teleport Homer, or not Homer, the teleporters, the personal backpack size devices on the interceptors? Well, they're interceptors, but whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, we're just trying to give this Terminator squad an extra ability, and having it be one-time use, I think, is absolutely a way to balance it out to be fairer. So that can all be thanks to the big improvement to Terminator armor here for the Primaris in its power plant. So, a one-time use teleport shunt per battle, once per battle type deal. Well, that's great. So, what about weaponry now? Terminator armor is defined by weaponry a bit for certain roles. Now, this is where I'm going to do something that might be a little unpopular, and I'm going to disregard an assault squad. I get Terminator assault squads can be very capable. I've used assault squad type things in the form of Deathwings, a little different, but close enough, to great effect. But at the same time, I feel like we have enough stuff in the Primaris range to kind of fulfill that in-your-face assault role, right? Blade Guard veterans aren't pure assault, but they get the job done rather nicely, right? Assault intercessors do it a different way to kind of just chew through, the rank and file and whatever else. And while, yes, Thunderhammer Storm Shield is a fantastic combination, even Twin Lightning Claw is very nice, I just feel like in the form of Primaris, it just doesn't seem like something we would see for Primaris necessarily. The only claws I'm aware that we've seen anyway are on Shrike, and while yes, they do Thunderhammer Storm Shield, I feel like just having that as a Primaris version is, for me, would be a little lazy. And I get it's fantastic, but still, I would rather just have one squad and have it be a bit more unique feeling than having two squads like this, a range and a melee variant, and have them feel a little just uninspired, if that makes any sense. But totally makes sense that they do that. I get it if they would. Now, with that said, that leaves us with one squad. So, let's first look at its melee weapon, because they still have a melee weapon. And classically for the Imperium Terminators, it's Power Fists for the Indominus pattern and whatever else, with a Power Sword for the Sergeant. Well, for this, I'm taking inspiration from Tyberos the Redwake to a degree, and everybody in the squad would have it. There would be no Sergeant upgrade. And it would be a special gauntlet. It would be, basically, we could call it the Reaper Gauntlet. It would be a variable response weapon to kind of harken to the modular concept of Mark X, because Terminator armor won't be modular, and the fact that it's not modular allows it to be more protective and defensive, you could say. So instead, its modular nature that Primaris kind of have going for them would be in its threat response. And part of that is the melee weapon, this Reaper Gauntlet. This gauntlet will have blades that are retractable, and then as well as be Power Fist size. Kind of like Tyberos the Redwake's Hunger and Slake Archaeotech gauntlets that he has, which allow him to basically attack as either Lightning Claws or Chain Fists, or one of each or whatever else. I forget exactly how the rules have evolved for him, but basically they have Lightning Claws and they have Chain Fists on them. They're Archaeotech gauntlets of unknown origin, and we don't want to steal his thunder 100%. So we're just going to say that the suit can only afford to really power one gauntlet, and it's not going to have Chain Fist capability. It's just going to be a Power Fist or a Lightning Claw, or the equivalent thereof. They want to make it a little bit different. But it'll have two different profiles. And rules-wise, you would pick one profile for the entirety of the squad, and they would attack with that profile for that assault phase. And each assault phase, you can pick a different weapon profile should you desire. One profile would basically be a lightning claw, and the other one would basically be a power fist. And the lore would be with the blades extended, the power fields envelop the blade, the razor sharp blades for pinpoint precise strikes. That's rapid strikes, and then with the blades retracted, the entire gauntlet is sheathed in a power field for devastating hammer-like blows. Yada yada yada. This is going to allow it to be able to cut up some squishy infantry or smash through some heavy armor. So that's kind of a nice variable response for melee. And on top of that, it's going to need a ranged weapon. And I prefer the two melee weapon profiles to make you kind of choose, as opposed to just having a cool weapon profile that just good against everything. I'd rather have you make a choice. It just feels a bit more balanced, to even if it's just a placebo effect, but it also doesn't feel lazy. I think having one mega profile for certain things is a little lazy. Other things, it makes total sense. The Emperor's Sword, yeah, it should just cut through stuff. I get that. But something like this should have two weapon profiles. On top of that, I think that this could give off vibes of just being kind of lazy in itself, because now they don't have to. You don't have to worry about them being in certain situations. You don't have to think, I guess. But at the same time, Terminators were always kind of dangerous, even with just power fists against everything, and having it have a variable threat response capability, I think, is really fitting for such elite warrior status stuff as Terminators in general, especially for Primaris going this route and kind of being aligned with what Primaris do. Especially since we're looking at just one squad of them. They're not meant to dominate the battlefield to the point of why take anything else, not at all, but they're meant to be able to fulfill the role they're taken for regardless of what the enemy might try to throw at them, right? In my mind's eye, Terminators should never have to call in for reinforcements. I mean, obviously, you would want reinforcements, but I just envision Terminators, whether they're walking through city streets in a zone mortality situation or in open warfare, I never picture them having to, vox in for an answer to a threat because they don't have it. I always felt like they should kind of have it because they're Terminators. So with that, we have the idea of ranged weaponry. Now, this is going to be a case of, do you want it to be bolter-centric, as is kind of the Space Marine way nowadays, or you want them to harken back to the early days of Astartes? If you keep it bolter-centric, we can really draw inspiration from the crazy Mark 1 Terminators. The only art of Mark 1 I included in this ramble is what I'm referring to. It has two weapons on them. It has a carapace mounted weapon on their back, basically, and it has a weapon wielded in their arm, or carried by their right arm. And we could do something similar here with the Primaris Terminators. You could have like a heavy bolt rifle subtype on its carapace, and you can have some new rotary bolt rifle situation that is wielding as a weapon on its arm, thus allowing you to deliver some withering bolter firepower to kind of harken to the storm bolter concept or twin link bolter concept or whatever else. If you want to kind of keep it classic that way, it just allows them to bring more withering firepower. And again, the Redemptive Dreadnought has a bit more weapon profiles on it anyway than a standard Dreadnought, so having these two would make sense. And then the squad could be 3 to 5, with one of the members being able to have their carapace mounted weapon upgraded to, let's say, a accelerator autocannon or something like that, or a missile pod, or you could have something underslung on their arm, like a twin link type of autocannon or some type of rotary cannon or something like that. And you could just make up some weapons. A massive Hellblaster gun or something, right? And that would be the squad. And then the sergeant would be able to take, in addition to his weapons, maybe some type of assault launchers to give them some bonuses for charging or something. And you have a nice, compact, powerful, potent little ball of death in this 3 to 5 man squad. Conversely, if you want to really harken back to what's old is new again and really kind of draw inspiration from the retroness, we could take the Neo-Volkite pistol, turn into a Neo-Volkite type of carbine or rifle, and that carbine or that rifle could then have a power source being fed to them directly from the power plant of the Terminator, so a little cable, power cable that way, justifying why only they can use it, because it requires too much power to be in a canister form or to draw from a power armor's backpack or anything like that. Because you have this more efficient, powerful piece of our power pack for the Terminator, and thus you have a Neo-Volkite profile in the form of a rifle or a rapid-firing carbine or something. And this harkens back to the very early days of Astartes in the lore when Volkites dominated their weaponry. It's a little much for some people's taste, I get it, but just for a 3 to 5 man squad, justifying it by them having this enhanced power pack and everything else, I think it could work. And I love Volkite, so I would love to see that personally. But I think either weapon concept would work. And again, here you could have the concept of a heavy weapon for one member of the squad being either a missile pod on the carapace or replacing the Neo-Volkite with like a rotary cannon or a heavy hell blaster thing or whatever else, right, that you make up. Maybe even introduce grav weaponry here for the Primaris in the form of a Terminator heavy weapon option. Be kind of cool. And then give the Sergeant, again, those assault launchers for charging to give them added benefits while charging or something. Just some concepts. And I think you have a pretty cool unit that really wouldn't be stepping directly on the feet of other units, but rather complementing the force, being a nice bulwark to work around, central to your force, so to really support something, charge up the flank supported. Depending upon how other stuff becomes Primaris, I'm looking at Land Raiders in particular, what would happen with that, whatever else, could really accentuate how you use this theoretical concept of a squad. Deep striking in, being on the battlefield, kind of try to draw the enemy in and then teleport something away, or using them somewhere and then teleport something as a kind of a pincer maneuver with the rest of your force, once per battle. I think offers some real interesting gameplay mechanics and could just help the squad feel distinctly Terminator, but also like a little bit more than just a standard Terminator was. Kind of like the next step a little bit. Could be kind of cool. And it incorporates some of what the video games did to further, spice up the Terminator squad a little bit and put it into miniature form without going crazy. But there's just my own personal concept. One of the last things I'll bring up as we get long-winded and long story longer here. It's tempting to then have like a table or whatever that would allow you to, in certain phases, if you did certain things, use the power pack differently, like maybe overcharging the invulnerability save or charging up the Volkites if you didn't move to shoot at a longer range or whatever, right, you're doing. And yeah, having a more robust power plant opens up that option as a concept, but I feel that would get too wordy, too complicated, too unnecessary, and keeping it simple and having it in the lore and represented via the teleport shunt and the fact that it could have those Neo-Volkite rifles if you went that route, I think is more than enough to represent and the Reaper Gauntlet would be more than enough to represent that enhanced power plant capability. Last thing is stuff such as Deathwing Command Squads, Deathwing Knights, and then the more customizable nature of Space Wolves and whatever else. Here is where I think we would lose certain things for sure, right? And I think it's just the nature of the beast. Command Squad stuff is not that hard. You can have the standard bearer be on the back of the Terminator like we've seen before instead of being held by it. It's easy to do that type of upgrade and have that be upgradable for a Terminator Command Squad if that is a thing that you want to still be possible. You're able to then have some extra bits, whatever, to turn one of them into an apothecary even. And then if it's for a champion, if you want to have a champion be a part of it as well, then you can decide, well, what type of weapon would it wield in place of the Reaper Gauntlet, or would it forego ranged weapons for a shield? Whatever. You get to play with it that way. As far as Deathwing Knights, I specifically cite them because they are a special melee unit of Terminators for the Dark Angels. With that, I feel like perhaps they would have to revisit the Mace of Redemption and the Flail stat-wise to see why that and a Storm Shield would be more favorable than just a ranged weapon and the Reaper Gauntlet. But that would be up for grabs for design and whatever else as a theoretical concept. And as an aside, if they did this, then they could once again have Deathwing be nothing but Terminator armor, with Blade Guard veterans being the Battle Company veteran stuff. But again, that's all hearsay, spitballing for the fun of it. Anyways, that's my thoughts for a Primaris Terminator squad. I do think we'll see Primaris Terminators. We probably won't see them anywhere near like what I described. I feel like I had the benefit of being a fan, looking at it in hindsight, and not truly looking at it in a 100% balanced situation. But I do feel like the stuff I suggested, or I came up with, I guess, wouldn't necessarily be crazily unfair. One-time use thing, two weapon profiles you must choose between each phase, and then limiting their ranged weapon capability to just being a few, one heavy weapon option upgrade for the squad, and that's about it. I think one for the squad like we have already, but from a different choice thing, wouldn't be too bad. But again, that would be for GW to decide in their playtesting whenever they decide to do stuff for Primaris Terminator wise, which I do think will happen. It's not just hoping against hope. I feel fairly confident in that because Terminator armor has always represented something more than what POW armor is capable of doing, even Gravis. Anyways, that's my thoughts. I know a bit weird, a bit of a random, long-winded mini Ramblecast style of ramble, but share your thoughts, not just on the craziness that I brought up, but also how would you design Primaris Terminator armor? Share it in the comment section below. Anyways, that's it. Thanks very much for sticking through it. I know I didn't go over stats because I feel like going over stats is not necessary for this type of discussion. But anyways, that's that. Thanks for stopping by and sticking through it. And until next time, take it easy.